Before darkness gave way to dawn on the 31st of August 2023, disaster struck as flames gutted a 5-story building in central Johannesburg. Panic spread as residents ran for their lives. Some were trapped behind a locked gate on the ground floor and never made it out. The address was 80 Albert Street. What was a refuge to many turned into a death trap. Tonight we follow the papers, the testimony, and the hard questions of how a city's neglect turned a building into a coffin. But here's the real horror. This wasn't just a fire, it was a massacre created by locked gates, government neglect, and gangs who charged rent for death traps. The early morning hours of August 31st, 2023, saw a fire break out around 1 a.m. in the central business district of Johannesburg at a neglected 5-story building on the corner of Delvis and Albert Streets. The building, owned by the government, had been taken over by gangs and was severely overcrowded. As many as 400 impoverished people illegally occupied the building and were charged rent by gangs. Many of the residents were foreign nationals, economic migrants, and asylum seekers. The flimsy partitions and makeshift rooms erected by the residents became fatal death traps that sealed off their escape routes as the fire spread rapidly through the building. Electricity drawn through illegal connections also complicated matters, leaving the residents even more vulnerable as the fire continued to spread. As the fire raged violently, panic swept through the building. The only gate that allowed entry and exit from the building was locked, leaving residents with no way to escape. Amidst the screams and chaos, many residents, desperate to escape the fire, jumped out of the building's windows. While many made it out by jumping from the windows, some unfortunately did not survive the fall. Firefighters arrived at the scene, and rescue efforts began immediately. Many people were evacuated from the ferocious blaze, but as rescue efforts progressed, firefighters came upon a devastating scene. They discovered the piled-up bodies of residents who had attempted to exit the burning building through the locked gate on the ground floor. The scale of loss was devastating. 7 children were among the dozens of people who lost their lives to the flames. According to the National Prosecuting Authority, at least 76 people were killed in the fire. Dozens of people were injured and rushed to nearby hospitals, where they received treatment for burns, fall-related injuries, and smoke inhalation. Although reports of the exact casualty count from the aftermath vary, this fire accident is remembered as one of the deadliest in South Africa's history. Ask yourself, what kind of city forces families to choose between burning alive or jumping out of windows? That's not tragedy, that's policy failure. Long before number 80 Albert Street became the scene of one of South Africa's worst fire tragedies, it had a very different life. This building, erected in 1954, was once a central pass office during the apartheid era of racial segregation. It was a notorious checkpoint through which laws that restricted the movement of black people everywhere in the country were enforced. After apartheid gave way to democracy in 1994, the building's role underwent a dramatic shift. Ozindizo Ministries took it over and became a city-run shelter of refuge for women who fled from abusive homes. For a while, it stood as a symbol of protection in Johannesburg, but as the river of time washed over the building, the shelter had to shut down. Maintenance stopped, and it became abandoned, left to rot away till its eventual collapse. The building is located in the decaying heart of Johannesburg's central business district, and is just one of the hundreds of hijacked buildings that are unlawfully seized by syndicates. Although the city owns the building, it receives basically no public services. According to residents, rent was paid to a syndicate that controlled the building and provided zero safety. Each room costs about $42 per month. Residents included migrants, asylum seekers, and South Africans who were either too poor or were shut out from formal housing. Residents also said that there was little to no maintenance carried out on the premises. Fire extinguishers or emergency exits were also non-existent in the building. This phenomenon is the theme of the rundown central business district in Johannesburg, With the government unwilling to provide alternative housing for people occupying these buildings, the situation has worsened over time. A year after the tragic incident, the building has been closed off with a green fence. While the building has become a shell of its former self with nobody officially living there, some homeless people have found their way in. Some of these people were former residents up until the fire. For these people still living there, leaving is not an option. Migrants and asylum seekers remain there out of fear of being deported if they ever surface in the official system. Years of neglect, eviction, and broken promises have fostered deep distrust in the authorities, so much so that even when authorities offered relocation after the fire, most refused to leave. The irony? This very building once controlled black South Africans under apartheid. Decades later, it controlled them again, this time with chains on the gates. The Johannesburg fire was a preventable tragedy of circumstance born from systemic failures and neglect. Ever since the building was taken over, every feature erected to make the building livable for these people became a catalyst for the catastrophic fire disaster. Partitions made from easily combustible materials divided the 5-story building into numerous tiny rooms. Plastic tarpaulins, sheets of plywood, and cheap furniture littered the interior of the building, creating a fuel load that was far higher than what the building was initially designed to bear. The building was also rife with illegal electrical connections that were threaded through walls and ceilings. These sometimes naked wires presented an ever-present risk of a fire outbreak. Once the fire erupted like water from a dam, the narrow, poorly ventilated corridors worked like chimneys that channeled heat and smoke with terrifying speed. Escape routes initially built into the structure may have been able to save several lives, but they had been compromised long before the fire started. Doors were either welded shut, locked, or chained to prevent robberies and theft. This left the building with only one entry point that also served as the only exit, which later sealed the fates of many of the residents. What was meant to be a protective feature became a ticking bomb that took the lives of many. As the fires raged and smoke and heat surged, although many were just meters away from being free, these barriers of safety turned against them and stopped them from ever reaching safety. Inside 80 Albert Street existed what can be described as an urban shack settlement housed within a masonry shell. Once the first embers of the flame were sparked, the outcome was literally unchangeable. As the fire spread rapidly, the corridors funneled smoke and heat with unprecedented dedication. Exits were sealed off and offered no escape. In such a situation, a mass casualty event was not just possible, it was inevitable. Every illegal wire, every welded door, every locked gate wasn't just negligence. It was a loaded gun the city left lying around. The fire just pulled the trigger. As investigators dug deeper into the ashes of 80 Albert Street, the truth about the cause of the fire and why it spread so fast began to surface. In January 2024, the cause of the fire was identified as arson when a 29-year-old South African man confessed to starting the fire. He said he was trying to dispose of the body of a man he killed when the flames went out of control and claimed the lives of about 76 people. The shocking and unexpected confession came when the man was testifying at an inquiry into the causes of the fire. According to him, he had poured petrol on the man's body before setting it on fire with a match. The police later said in a statement that they had arrested the suspect. The 29-year-old man, who was not named, was charged with 76 counts of murder, 120 counts of attempted murder, and a charge of arson. By the 12th of May 2025, the High Court ruled that his confession was admissible as evidence. This has allowed the trial to proceed, despite the defense's argument that the suspect was forced to make the shocking confession. Observers were quick to remind the public that these charges remain allegations until proven in court. While this case sheds more light on the origins of the fire, it does not tell the entire story. Alongside the trial, an inquiry revealed some wider systemic failures. The inquiry found that city entities had known about the hazards in the building since at least 2019. The sealed exits, illegally drawn power, and ignored safety codes. Yet little was done to intervene. In this sense, the fire was not only the result of an individual's act, it was also the predictable outcome of a system that allowed a high-risk environment to remain unchecked until tragedy struck. Johannesburg is widely known as the City of Gold, but behind the glitter hides a darker truth. Years of neglect, revolving political leadership, and the terrible housing crisis in the inner city have created the perfect climate for hijacked buildings to flourish. The empty shells of buildings that defined Johannesburg's central business district's prosperity lay abandoned and forgotten, only to be reclaimed by gangs and filled up with people who have nowhere else to go. The fire at 80 Albert Street is not an isolated event, but part of a much larger trend. Mass casualty disasters are not new to the South African informal housing sector and will continue to happen if changes are not made. This is because instability can force people to make impossible choices. If not having to sleep in the streets means having to sleep in unsafe buildings, families will troop in regardless of the dangers such a decision poses to their lives. Also, authorities cannot evict people from these neglected buildings without providing alternative housing solutions. This will only displace residents without solving the underlying problem. So the questions remain. How can a city balance safety with shelter? Can laws protect lives without criminalizing poverty? If Johannesburg is the City of Gold, why do so many die in buildings worth less than ash? Maybe the real gold is in who's profiting from poverty. Following the horrible fire incident, official inquiries have laid out a clear list of recommendations. Investigators have argued that responsibility rests not only on the man accused of starting the fire, but also extends to relevant city departments. This includes the Department of Human Settlements, the Johannesburg Property Company, and Public Safety, all the way to the Power, Water, and Waste departments. They all knew the high risks that plagued 80 Albert Street, yet failed to do anything about them. Sanctions have been urged for those lapses by the inquiry, along with citywide audits to account for the hijacked buildings. This ensures that these buildings are secured before another disaster strikes. It also called for fire codes to be enforced, and the clearing of blocked exits so that such doesn't repeat itself. Alas, words and recommendations mean little until they are executed. For meaningful changes to be made, the response must be both practical and humane. When unsafe buildings are shut down and residents are evicted, alternative accommodations must be ready to prevent displacement through law enforcement. The tragedy at 80 Albert Street showed how devastating neglect can be. The question now is whether Johannesburg can act in time to prevent the next one. But let's be honest, how many commissions, inquiries, and reports have we seen before? Do recommendations save lives, or just bury responsibility in paperwork? 80 Albert Street was supposed to be a shelter. It became a symbol. The inquiry can assign blame. A court can weigh a confession. The truth is, 80 Albert Street didn't just fail because of fire. It failed because Johannesburg decided these lives weren't worth protecting. If we remember anything, let it be this: safety is a system, and systems fail long before flames appear. Thank you for coming this far with us. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more.